Hello, everybody. Brandon Ryan from Cakewalk. This is Seth Perlstein.
What's up, guys and gals?
And thank you for joining us for the second installment of CakeTV Live. We are here in Burbank, California. Not so sunny Burbank, California today. So those of you in England, got some friends over here with equally cloudy weather. And we're glad to be here for the second installment. We're going to go through some music production using SONAR X1 as last time. It's be a little bit different. I'm kind of over here in the driver's seat. Seth's sitting next to me. He's going to be answering questions with the live chat and funneling some stuff over to me. And
yeah, feel free to interject with questions, comments. We'll do our best to get to as many of them as we can and try to pepper them throughout the demo.
Yeah, we want to thank those of you who are in odd time zones for getting up early, staying up late, and joining us. This is completely live, so this is not a pre-recorded session. It's happening as it happens, for better or for worse. And so it's important to note. Just as far as the setup that we're using, we're here at Center Staging. Roland's office is here in Burbank. And here you have our beautiful setup. And what we're basically using here is an HP computer that's driving SONAR X1, X1D, expanded, obviously. We've got a VS700C console. We've got a VS700R OctaCapture. We're actually using the OctaCapture for audio. We're at about 2 milliseconds of latency. We're using an A800 Pro, which we'll be doing a lot of the keyboard stuff on. And over here, we also have a Jupiter 80. And the Jupiter 80 actually has a new ACT template, which we're going to talk about. And I'll probably use the Jupiter 80 a little bit as well, because it's got some nice tricks for controlling and things. Am I forgetting anything?
Oh, well, we've also got the Roland M48 personal monitor mixer system that we're using for our headphone monitors that's connected from the RSG
M300.
M300 system.
Yeah, so
for our
that's
little
all
front of house system.
That's all React based.
Yeah.
So it's pretty neat setup, fairly self-contained, but kind of like gear lust around here. So anyway, here's the idea of what we're going to be doing. A lot of people create music for a lot of different reasons these days. And one of the reasons is that it becomes increasingly profitable for a lot of musicians is creating music maybe for TV, for video games, for music libraries, all these kinds of things, sort of instrumental pieces of music. And it's more important than ever that the stuff sound professional, but it also gets done fast. So if you have a record deal and so you have a year to make your album and you're sending your songs in to a professional engineer, then great, that's fantastic. Take all the time in the English manor house to make your album. But in a lot of people's scenarios, it's about this is due tomorrow, this is due later, we got to get something done. So the concept for this demonstration was creating a piece of music. This is actually going to be about 3.5 minutes when it's finished, but the idea was to create a piece of music using Sonar's tools and get something done fairly quickly and hopefully sounding good by the end. But you be the judge of that. So without further ado, let's talk about the control surface setup just real quickly. I'm going to hit P, and we're going to go to our control surface setup. And what you see here is we've got a VS700, and this is set up console. We're just using the 700C as a console, because in this case we happen to be using the OctaCapture as an audio interface. We have the A Pro, and we set that up with the import of A Pro 2. Outport is none. And we also have the Jupiter 80 control surface plugin. So that's also installed, Jupiter 80 input and output. So we have 3 control surfaces here, essentially. We can use the transports on all of them, can use any of the keyboards. It provides us a lot of flexibility as to where we want to be able to control. So I could be in another area with the Jupiter wanting to control. I could control Sonar, start, stop, record. Same thing with the A800. And if I'm sitting in my mixing position, I can do the same thing with the VS700C. So,
and each control surface can also be locked to a specific plugin or section of the app. So let's say, for example, maybe you've got a synth you want to control with only the A Pro, and then control maybe some Pro channel modules with the console, and then another synth from the Jupiter. So you can actually lock different control surfaces to specific plugins, synths, regions of the application, which is cool.
It's a great point. People don't often think of having multiple control surfaces, and I think Sonar is capable of at least 16 control surfaces. Never tried more than that. Never even tried 16.
I have not approached that number.
That works.
No.
But having all these control surfaces and not conflict or step on each other is a pretty cool thing. Okay, so I've got basically like 2 tracks we're going to start with. So what I did was I kind of laid out some markers of where I wanted things to be. Now, if you were, doing this for video, the markers could coincide with certain sections of kind of the action of what happens. There is no video in this case. This is just sort of a layout that kind of helps us structure things. And there's basically 2 parts to begin with. Now, the first part is a synth part I found that kind of kicked all this thing off, but the synth is not on this computer. It's Rob Papin's sub-boom bass. Cool sound, kind of kicked all this off, but I needed to transport this project to here. The synth is not on here, so I just froze it, and here's the track. I'll play a little bit for you. It's a little bass and a little, it's kind of a little rhythmic thing. Just 2 chords going back and forth. So we're going to start with that. So that's a frozen track, 1 synth, no effects, nothing on it. The next part is acoustic guitar. Now, not a great place to record acoustic guitar necessarily where we are. You guys probably don't want to sit and hear me record acoustic guitar. So I brought in just a couple of acoustic guitar parts. And we're first of all going to get those sounding good. So the first part is a finger-picked part. It was recorded, well, you'll hear. It's a little bit muddy. And doesn't have a lot of articulation, and it needs to be brighter. But here, let's take a listen. Turn it up just a little bit so you can hear. Okay, so first thing we need to do is get that sounding better. So in the Pro channel, what I've done, and again, just click on the track, there's the Pro channel. So all I did here was just use the G type. So this is a nice EQ mode for doing kind of tonal balancing, tonal shaping. At low gain, it has a pretty wide Q. So you can get a lot of, it just works well for this kind of thing because it's nothing surgical I'm trying to do necessarily. That would be kind of the hybrid mode or maybe the E-type mode. So all I've done is use the shelf to kind of roll off some low end there. And I've just brightened it up. Just kind of wide band tonal balancing, brought it up, quite a bit, maybe even like 10 dB or something like that. So, and then I've used the PC76 compressor just to add a little bit of compression to it, and I'll turn these on kind of one at a time, and we'll take a listen to kind of how it sounds. So, playing the part, EQ, so all that low rumble's gone, all that. A little compression. So no Pro channel, Pro channel. So obviously a drastic difference.
Oh yeah, you've gone immediately from a very sort of dry, dark sound to a very bright kind of acoustic guitar that will cut through the mixes we'll hear. Yeah,
I mean, this is recorded with a Martin. Martins tend to have a lot of bass. The mic that was used with the finger picking style just, would not stand out. And so in this, since this is going to be sort of a more ambient electronic style tune we're working towards, it works quite well. So let's listen to the other part. So later on, when things really get going in the piece of music, somewhere around measure 79 or so, there's another guitar part. And let's take a look at what's in store for this. So just some kind of sort of Spanish style strumming. But this also needs to come out a little bit. The low end needs to be cut out of it. So again, cut off the low end. Left everything okay because tonal balance is all right with that. With the picked strumming, the kind of high end of the rosewood guitar comes out a little bit more. And add a little bit of, again, some compression. So let's take a listen now with that. Without. So a little louder, stands out in the mix a little bit better. Other thing I'd like to do is just add a little bit of ambience with some reverb. This is just the Sonitus reverb. Dropped it in, let's take a listen. Maybe too much. And listening with the other part. So that's what we got so far. So those are kind of the recorded parts. We've mixed the acoustic guitars a little bit, and that's where we're at. So let's rewind back, and I'll just do a quick save, and we'll move on from here. So next thing I think we want to do is just add a little bit of ambience in the beginning. You think?
Yeah, I think so. I think that would work well.
So what I've done here, I set a little over in the browser, which as many of you know, you just hit B, opens the browser. I've got some elements of the music that I'm going to use just to kind of, you know, it makes it easy just to drag the stuff over. I've got all the elements in one place. I saved a preset, just hitting Save Content Location, and then here's everything I need. We're going to use, I think I'm going to use Zeta 2. I've got a sound for Zeta 2 I kind of want to have as the intro. And what we could do is just go to plugins and drag in Zeta 2. And first thing I want to do, last time people said, hey, we'd like to hear and see more about Zeta 2. So figured, why not do that right now? So those of you who don't have Zeta 2, it's a great synth. It's got 1,000 new patches. Interface is completely different than Zeta 1. It adds basically a much easier interface to be able to work with. You can see both filters simultaneously now. Envelopes are, you know, manipulatable, malleable, able to be manipulated right here on screen. One of the big things too is the modulation destinations. I mean, you can have any source basically go to any destination. There's a built-in arpeggiator, performance section with joystick control. If we go over to the effects section, the effects are now able to be drag and dropped, compressor, reverb, EQ, all that kind of stuff. Anything I'm forgetting, Seth?
Well, actually, since we're talking about Zeta 2 and stuff that uses maybe a bunch of CPU, we've got a question from Kevin, and he's wondering how many cores does our CPU have?
This is 8, so it's actually 4 cores plus 4 hyperthreads. So this is a Gen 1 i7, I believe. So yeah, so we're looking at 8 cores, but 4 real cores and 4 virtual cores. And I believe 8 gig of RAM is what's in there.
And if you don't mind, we've got another question from
Sure.
Music Kid. He says he's asking if there's a specific reason why you chose to use the G-type EQ mode on the acoustic guitar.
Yeah, reason being was that the G-type tends to have wider bandwidth at lower gain. So you don't have to crank the gain massively to get kind of a wide balance. And since I really wanted to essentially boost everything, almost the whole audible spectrum of at least the high end of the guitar, rather than turning up, let's say, an E-type and then widening the Q and turning it up and widening the Q, or maybe not even getting as wide a Q as I wanted, the G at low gain starts out with a really, really wide Q. That's sort of the Q gain dependency. And G-type is similar to maybe like Neve consoles. You know, it's a more kind of vintagey EQ type sound, and what it tends to be good for is just overall tonal balancing. It's what most people would describe maybe as musical versus surgical.
Yeah, it's very musical. You'd kind of use it for adding color or tone, maybe not for like notching out a specific frequency maybe you've got in a drum. That's what you'd use E-type for. It's got a little bit more of a narrow kind of curve. So yeah, like you were saying, you kind of just wanted to add some of that top end color to the guitar sound, and reaching for the G-type, it's just kind of instantaneously right there.
Yep.
Little boost, boom, and it sounds.
Yeah, I didn't want to pull any frequencies out necessarily. I just wanted to brighten it.
Right.
So the G-type is perfect for that. So yeah.
Well, you know, you were asking me, did we forget something on Zeta 2? And I don't know if you mentioned this, but the new browser. The patch browser in Zeta 2.
Yeah, the patch browser, you've got the factory content and the classic content. The classic content, of course, has the classic, well, where is it? The classic, where are you? You know what I'm looking for.
Which one? Which one are you looking for?
Where's our baby? 8-bar contact.
You could do a search for it.
Hey.
And that's another cool thing about the new browser.
It's got this new,
the Spotlight search.
A lot of 8 stuff. A lot of things with 8s. 8-bar contact sequence. The classic Zeta 1 sound out of the classic content. It's all there, still sounds the same. Then you go to factory content. There's a little showcase bank. I'll just play a few patches out of it. So some of this stuff is very sequency. So it's kind of instant song. There's a little die you can roll too, which just brings up a random patch if you're feeling really uninspired. Nice basses. Let's see, some good stuff. Leads. Big bass lead. It's a bass and a lead. And of course, you know, it's just big sounds. This one you recognize from one of the videos we used. This is a great patch. Love that patch. Could play that one all day long.
Yeah, it's a good one.
And everything from that to ugly basses. So I mean, it's just got tons of different. This is a great sort of moody patch. Act control. Later, Brandon stops playing the patch. So you got things like this. Okay, so those of you who don't have any ears left, hey, by the way, this brings up a great point, something I wanted to mention early on. A lot of this stuff is going to be subtle. You're going to hear bass. You're going to hear quality of a lot of different things. If you're listening on a pair of laptop speakers and you've got some earbuds or some headphones, or you can go in your studio and listen, highly recommend it, because it's going to be a much better experience, because we are broadcasting in high definition, and we're also broadcasting in with high quality audio in stereo and everything. So a lot of this will be a lot more pleasant if you switch to some higher end monitoring system if you have it available. Mod wheel does a lot of cool. That's what I love about this, and also pitch bend.
Yeah, and that really speaks to the mod matrix. I mean, you've got 16 destinations over here on the screen. You can literally in Zeta 2 route anything to anything in the mod matrix, as far as routing like the mod wheel to anything can be a destination.
Mod wheel's doing actually doing 2 different filter cutoffs.
Yeah.
Can also work with the volume. I mean, yeah, it's a very, very flexible modulation matrix. It's dirty. And this is controlling a decimator amount.
Right. And one of my favorite things too is you can actually use your mouse, grab the wave shape, and actually move it around and change it manually on the fly.
Yeah, you can.
It's kind of designing your own wave inside of Zeta 2.
So anyway, so this is a great patch too.
Yeah.
Off. It's basically a whole song.
I've actually got an incoming question for
you. What's that?
Yeah, if you were out there on the ice plains of Hoth, I think the winds would sound just like that.
That's the patch.
But Chops asks, with Zeta 2, what is oversampling?
Oversampling actually will go through, and so you've got waveforms. You've got basically wavetables in this thing, and so every time you basically take one of these internal sort of wave sounds that the sounds are built out of, it has to be passed on to the audio engine, and this can be done with varying degrees of accuracy. So, you know, how many times you sort of sample a curve or some kind of something to do with a waveform, and then you pass it to the audio engine, the more you sort of sample it, the clearer picture you sort of get of that waveform. So higher oversampling gives you basically less aliasing, I guess, in the waveform.
Smoother sound, basically.
Smoother sound. And that's really what it comes down to. So the more oversampling, basically the smoother of the waveforms that are built into Zeta get passed on to the audio engine in Sonar.
And it's cool because you can use that feature, the oversampling feature, actually as a sound design element. So for example, if you've got the oversampling setting on low and you want maybe a lo-fi sound, kind of not really a bit reduced sound, but just something that sounds a little grainier for a style of music, you can do that. Or if you want something that just sounds much more open and smooth. So it's kind of a nice little sound design thing too. Another quick question about Zeta 2. K Crane asks, when you drop in Zeta 2, does it automatically sync to tempo?
Yeah, it does. There is a way to turn it off. Generally, I always want tempo sync to happen.
I would think you would, yeah.
Yeah, I don't even know where. Actually, here's the ARP, which can actually tempo sync. So just checking this out. Here's the ARP. Here's your sync mode.
There are a few different elements. I mean, like you said, you've got the arpeggiator. You can have the arpeggiator sync to any musical value.
Okay.
some nice little
playing
comb,
with the bit decimator.
Stop playing with the comb filter, sir.
Yeah, the new comb filter.
And then, of course, you've got like your delay. You can have your delay, of course, sync to any
tempo
musical
as well.
value.
Yeah.
But the patches are going to automatically sync to whatever tempo your project is at by default.
Yep.
And you can then go in and manipulate the musical values to which the different parts sync up.
Right. So you could go change this mode to gate or free form, which is mean it would not sync, and then sync is there. So yeah, pretty much it locks in. I mean, it's so nice. Tempo syncing is one of the best things that ever happened to me, to music. By far, having to figure out and whip out the calculator. I love delays and everything that tempo sync. You can always turn it off, but it's great. So anyway, so it's just awesome. There's just tons of stuff, and it's all, you have hard leads and keyboards and sequences and plucked sounds and sound effects, and you know, it's a monster sounding synth. So anyway, anything else about Zeta 2?
That's all as far as the questions go. I know, yeah.
So what I'm going to do is actually drop Zeta 2 out of there, and I have a track. We're going to kind of, there's a little bit cooking show style to this. So as opposed to hearing me record 3.5-minute parts and go back and record everything, everybody's got lives, we got to get through this. So I have some things that are kind of just sort of pre-done, and I'll play little bits and pieces, and you'll kind of see as we go along. But I have a track for Zeta already, for Zeta 2. It's a sound called Noisy Drops. It sounds like this. You can probably hear that. And what's cool is when you mod wheel it, very vintagey kind of noise, like harpy type stuff. And that's going to be basically playing through and just adding a little bit of movement to this. So I'll just play from the beginning real quickly. Very simple. Trust me, you didn't want to see me record this whole thing for 3 minutes.
But it does sound cool.
And you can see all the mod wheel stuff that's going to sort of add to the drama here and there, you know. So like moving up to, you know, some of these other parts, you'll hear these notes. And it'll kind of swell as we get into another section. Okay, obviously something's going to happen there. So that's our part, our Zeta 2 part called Noisy Drops. It's a great sound, love it. Not obtrusive, but just kind of adds to the feel of the whole thing. And all right, so let's just do a quick save, and then let's bring up, now this is probably the most important part of the piece, one of the most important pieces. There's like a little piano riff that happens in here.
Yeah, actually, if you don't mind, before I get to the piano, we've got a question that just came in from Brian L1. If we could go back to Zeta 2 for just a moment. He's asking, how would Zeta 2 map out to a control surface? And maybe we could get a shot of the console. He just wants to see how some of the different parameters would look if you had a surface mapped out to that.
Well, let's see. I mean, you want to bring
absolutely. So basically, the way we're working with this is through ACT, or active controller technology. And so it's basically going to automatically map out to different parameters in the in a synth, in a plugin, or whatever you want.
I mean, and some of the ways it's already set up, like with ACT. With, for instance, if I move filters, I don't want to mess my patch up real quickly, but but I've got like cutoff, resonance on these 4 knobs. So it's already set up with ACT to be able to lay out kind of in a logical manner. But if you want to change it, you just hit the ACT Learn button, twiddle some knobs, move some controls on anything you want. You know, VS700, 800 Pro, the Jupiter, what have you.
And I promise I won't mess your thing up too much, but you can see here, like knob 1 automatically maps out to filter cut.
Yep.
Knob 2 to the other filter. Knob 3 goes to resolution, etc. And it's not only working that way with the 700C. Like you said, it works with the 800 or with you know, any control surface.
Yeah, so we actually go through with, and you can MIDI learn any of this stuff if you're not using, you know, even if you're not a Sonar user. You can right-click on any of these things and MIDI learn them. But what we've tried to do over the years is go back through every plugin, every instrument, especially new ones, and lay them out for ACT. For especially, obviously, if you have Roland devices and things, it's gonna lay out just right, and you can go make tweaks. For instance, this is set up cutoff, resonance. Sometimes I like cutoff, resonance for 2 different filters, which, by the way, you can see simultaneously now. So that's, that's a matter of taste, and you can easily do that. Once you do it, it remembers it forever, and you don't have to save it or worry about it anymore.
Yeah, and to answer another quick question, yes, ACT, of course, works with 32-bit plugins, also 64-bit plugins. Doesn't matter if it's 32 or 64-bit. It works with, DirectX plugins, VST plugins, Pro Channel modules, synths, and effects. Basically, it works with any plugin or synth that exposes its parameters to the host, which is literally everything that's been made like in the last decade. You might find some 15-year-old plugin that's obsolete that doesn't do it, but those are few and far between.
And if you are using a BitBridge plugin, there is a little bit different process. It doesn't have this sort of window. It has kind of a wrapper window, and you'll need to use the ACT learn, the global ACT learn up in the control bar as opposed to the one in the window. But yeah, but this is a 64-bit native Zeta 2 plugin. And so everything works as expected.
Yeah, and we do have videos on CakeTV, cakewalk.com/CakeTV, that actually cover kind of the steps that we really don't have maybe time to go into today. So if you're curious about what are the steps to doing ACT learning and that sort of thing, you can go check it out on our CakeTV site or our YouTube channel too.
Okay, so the piano part we were talking about. Now, Sonar comes with a version of True Pianos, comes with the Amber module. I'm a big fan of True Pianos, always have been.
Absolutely.
Love the playability of it, love the way it sounds. Particularly the Emerald module, it's just, a matter of taste. So I kind of have a track template that I have that has a little bit of reverb on it, and it's always ready to go. So I'm just going to drag it in, and it instantiates itself, and there it is, right? So we have our those of you who just woke up, a little sleepy time music for you. But it's so... has all the sympathetic, resonance and everything. So it's just a joy to play. I love it a lot. So I've got a little piano riff that basically goes through this whole thing, and this was one of the things that started this little piece. Something like that. Very, very simple.
Racer is asking, if you don't mind me interrupting, is that reverb on True Pianos, is that built into True Pianos, or do you have a reverb plugin?
Actually, I'm using the Sonitis reverb.
So Sonitis again.
It's Sonitis again, yeah. Okay. If I bypass this, we'll hear it's a... So I just wanted some real ambient kind of sound. So it's just that. Another reverb I actually like that I use a lot of times at home is the Aike Classic Studio Reverb. Happen to really like that one as well for piano for some reason. Don't know why. But this gets a very similar style sound. And the Sonitis reverb for a lot of things is still really great. I mean, it was good then and it's good now. So that's what I use on this one. So again, in cooking show fashion, I'm going to hit H. So this is our manager. This is our track manager with all of the tracks and channels. And one thing I recommend a lot of people is to keep track console visibility states in sync checked. This makes sure that when you hide or show a track, you hide and show the mixer channel with it. Now, there might be cases where you don't want to do that, where you might want to hide a track, but you need the mixer channel there, or vice versa. And you can do that just by unchecking that button. But I've got my piano part pretty much ready to go. There is no intro. I'm going to go ahead and record that. This is the same piano sound. It's True Pianos X64 Emerald module with a little bit of verb. And I'm just going to quickly record in a little part. So I've got my metronome on during record, which you can turn off or on here, record or play. Metronome options are now here. That was a new thing in X1D that brings it all up with all the subdivisions and everything. If you missed the last webinar, Seth talked a little bit about that. And I'm just going to record from the beginning, and then it's pretty much just the same thing over, so it goes on for then. But just so you can get the vibe of what's going on, let's record. Okay, so that's basically the part. You can see the pedal stuff in there, and it pretty much repeats. So we'll just play back a little bit. So pretty simple. I like to save after everything I do, just because I never like to lose things. Not that anything could ever happen, ever, in a software DAW. All of them are 100% stable at all times.
Hey, nothing wrong with backing up your files.
So I've got the acoustic guitars here in a little folder. The rest of the stuff's just kind of, randomly happening here. True piano's up top, Zeta down here, got the acoustic guitars. Pretty simple so far. I think we should do some drums. It's time to kind of move forward.
Let's add some percussion.
So originally, I had thought, all right, well, in this drum section, let's just have kind of a floor on the floor, like electronic part. And, it's easy to go grab a loop and just drag it in. And here's what I had originally had. I just want to show you. It's called Full Moon. And it kind of came in and did this. So it was this. Okay, kind of cool, but it's a loop. It's Lord knows how many songs it's been in before, who's used it, what have you, and it's just, they're great for kind of mocking up stuff, but I really feel like that for the most part, if you can create your own thing, it's going to sound more original, and the cumulative effect of using a bunch of loops versus using a bunch of stuff that you've created yourself, you hear it in the end. I do. I just feel like it's more mine at the end, and I feel it sounds more real, it's more organic, it's more inspired. So great to use that, but I didn't want to use this. So I wanted to kind of create my own thing for this. So we'll go back and just get rid of that. I just wanted to show you that for comparison's sake. I'm going to get rid of that part. So I need to create, but I kind of want that four on the floor sort of electronic thing. And I was thinking, I could actually improve on this. Like something like a 909, to give it a more dance kind of feel would be really cool. So I have a track template. For basically that I've created for most of the kits, the 808, 707, 909 kits that are in Sonar in Session Drummer 3. These things are great. If you don't use them, check them out, because these are not resamples of somebody's kits. These are the pristine units from the Roland Museum in Hamamatsu, Japan, and that's partly why sometimes when you listen to them, they sound maybe it's slightly lackluster, is because it's just the sounds coming out of the box. They have not been produced, so it allows you to do what you want to do with compression and EQ and reverb and stuff. So I've done that with a 909 kit and separated out to separate tracks and basically made a track template of it. So I'm just going to drag that in, drop it. So it automatically puts all my tracks in the folder, indentions back again, an X1D, thank you. And if you go look at the console, it has a bring over the buses here a little bit. You see it's made a drum bus here. So in this template I've made, I basically have a few tracks separated out, kick, snare, hi-hats, and crashes. It's a real simple kit, and everything's run over to a drum bus. Now I don't have any effects on anything yet because I want to do that here with you. Double-clicking the icon, here's the Session Drummer kit. Totally bone-dry 909 kit, okay? But I think it's going to be good for this. So we need to create a pattern. Most of you know that the step sequencer button is right up here. You just click that, up comes your step sequencer, and you're ready to start making music with the step sequencer, all right? So let's see what's going on up here. It's going to start at drums 1, and just scroll down a little bit. I want this to be an 8-beat pattern. This is going to be a real simple 4 on the floor pattern. Again, down here, you can audition all your sounds, okay? So first thing I'm going to do is right-click and say fill every 4, because I want that 4 on the floor sound, and it goes ahead and makes a pattern up here. Hit play. Okay, real simple. But I'd like a little da-da-dum at the end. Okay, so little pushes it forward a little bit. And let's work with the closed hi-hat section. So I'm going to say fill every 4 on this as well. Okay. Very loud, very steady, so I'm just going to give a little bit of variation. Maybe not quite that much to the hi-hat, just a little variation. Bring down the velocity a little bit. Maybe not that much, but okay, a little bit better. And let's add some open hi-hat just in between to kind of mimic what that other pattern was doing. Again, on this one, make it just push a little bit, velocity down a little bit. You can also go right to the track, actually start mixing that overall hi-hat sound because everything's mixed right into that hi-hat channel. Basically, we got a quick hi-hat, 4 on the floor kind of sound going on.
Like inside of 30 seconds, you can really get in there and point and click and kind of carve out a basic groove and maybe even not so basic. You got, you know, volume automation and all sorts of stuff going on there. So.
And I just grabbed the edge of it and dragged it out to kind of where I want it to go. And I think I'm going to have it run all the way up to the finger acoustic, kind of have a little drop out maybe in this section, and then everything will come back in maybe more dramatically at drums too. So let's actually do that section. So, and then we'll mix the drums a little bit. So I'm just going to hold control and I'm going to copy this over to drums 2. So here again, that's going to happen there, but this needs to be bigger and better. And again, we're going to mix this here in a second to get a little bit better. But this section, I'd like to have some more stuff going on, maybe a snare, some hand claps, things like that. So what we have to do, because if we make any changes here, it happens here. That's why they both have that little 2. So if we just right click and say unlink step sequencer clips, now any changes we make here will not happen here. So this is all just going to be kick and hi-hat. This will be kick, hi-hat, snare, etc. So double clicking, up comes this pattern. And let's just play it. And let's go maybe to the snare part. Okay, simple snare. But maybe at the end, it'd be cool to do kind of like a little crescendo roll. So I'm going to draw in 4. I'm going to double click them to flam them. I'm going to open up that section. I'm going to crank up the flam and then just draw in a little crescendo. Hear how it sounds. That's pretty much what I'm looking for. Nothing too, but just kind of a little, you know. Nice. And let's drop a clap in on a couple. There is no wrong in these kind of patterns. It's all about taste.
There really isn't. We're getting kind of an interesting question here from Marky ZNO, and he asks kind of a long-winded question, but it's what can you do in step sequencer that you can't do in the piano roll in terms of a more natural drum programming style? And that's an interesting question.
Well, I mean, I think the piano roll is good. I use the piano roll a lot of times for programming acoustic drums. I mean, it all depends. But in the piano roll view, you kind of get maybe a more granular control per measure because you can, you know, it's not steps. Whereas here, you can get more granular control, but if you make it like, you know, 16 steps per beat, you know, it's for every one, and you may not want that. But I find for electronic music, first of all, the way you can quickly make flams just by double clicking. Yeah. The way, like what I just did with velocity, you can swing each sound independently. Like I could swing the snare or swing the hi-hat independent with each sound. Yes, you could select those notes in the piano roll and bring up quantize and add swing, but it's a process that's done. It's now in the undo history. You can't just go and control it anywhere. Also, I find I can just visualize the drum patterns better. Things just lock in. I mean, for doing, you know, and being able to sort of see, especially like, you know, you look at it like this, being able to just see this drum pattern in this sort of way, it's just visually a lot different. I find I do drum patterns very, very differently in this kind of thing. So I think it's the independent time shift, being able to flam, create rolls like that, independent velocity, duration per sound, being able to visualize it all in the same way, double clicking, tying notes together very easily. You know, I think that's better in there. But if I was trying to do like realistic drummer fills, like with, you know, like acoustic drums, I might actually elect to use the piano roll for some of that.
Sure, yeah. I mean, and perhaps maybe a difference in workflow is, are you finger drumming or banging out the drum part in real time? Maybe editing in the piano roll is better for a part like that. Whereas if you're pointing and clicking and just kind of laying down something that's a little more set, like what we're looking at here, maybe the step sequencer is better for that kind of workflow.
Yeah, I think like a lot of times when I do acoustic drums, I'll kind of finger drum a lot of the parts in, and then I go back to the piano roll and mess with them. But when I want to create like electronic drum parts that are really kind of robotic and or maybe have a certain very just in the pocket kind of feel, they're repetitive, I find the step sequencer to be better. But the beauty is you have the choice.
Exactly, yeah.
You know, you have a very advanced step sequencer. You can also do bass lines in the step sequencer. That's another thing I like to do. Is you know, you put it in polyphonic mode, and you can actually add a lane or two that actually connect to a different instrument
Yeah.
So you could actually have a bunch of rows that are drums and then other rows that are like going to Rapture or something. And you could lock in a bass sound with and visualize all the drum hits and all the bass hits and the bass line in the same sequence, in the same step sequence.
Yeah.
And when you go grab it and move it around, everything goes with it, that whole step sequence, and you can save it, etc. So.
Yeah, and I guess I'll answer the question for Celiac. I think that's how you pronounce it. He asked if you can randomize velocity in timing in kind of an automated process, and you certainly can in the step sequencer. There's a step probability feature.
Yes, there is.
Which is sort of like a randomization. It uses kind of like control change data to randomize whether the hit will play or not. And then, of course, you can just draw in random stuff too.
Right, exactly. But step play probability, it's at 100%, so all these hi-hats are going to play. If I were to do something like this, the chance of them playing would be less or more.
Right, so it's like a percentage for each MIDI note will play at any given pass.
So sometimes they're there. So here, sometimes they're coming in, sometimes they're not.
Yeah.
Great for like percussion parts and stuff.
Yep.
I find that's kind of cool. And if you have a really repetitive hi-hat parts, like really intricate hi-hat parts, like like Aphex Twin type stuff or something.
Yeah, and Brian L1 asks if you can record directly to the step sequencer. So the way the workflow works for that is you'd record your MIDI, whether it's from a V-drum kit or from a keyboard or whatever. You'd record it into the piano roll view, and then you can convert any regular MIDI clip into a step sequencer clip, and then go ahead and edit it in the step sequencer. And you can also do that with regular MIDI clips you import from the browser. You can drop them into the step sequencer and convert it that way. So it's not maybe quite as direct, but you can definitely use that in your workflow.
Yeah. So let's keep going with the drums, because we're going to be here for 3 hours if we can.
Sure.
So for those of you, we schedule an hour, but we can't stop in an hour. So we'll probably be here at this late, an hour and a half. Okay, so sorry. This will be all recorded and broadcast afterwards, so if you miss it, you want to watch it later, you got to go. You can always watch it later, but it's nothing like being here live. So let's keep working on the drums a little bit. So let's go ahead and just close that out. And what I want to do is just beef up that snare. So I've got that 909 snare, but I'd like just a bigger something going on there. So I'm going to go back to my loops. And they have this drum loop called Pigeon, which has a very familiar sound. Many of you might recognize it. I like that snare, though.
Yeah,
It'd be cool.
Nice
It's kind of it's
snare,
tight, it's kind of acousticy. It might be nice over this. So I'm going to drag this in, and I'm going to drop it right where this section goes on the drums 2, the bigger one that has the snare. But there's going to be a problem here, I have a feeling. So first of all, let's take it, and I like to stay organized. Let's move it into our drums folder, and let's take it and route it out to our drum bus that got created when we dropped in Session Drummer. So now it's all going out the drum bus as well, right? So let's take a listen. Okay, sort of okay, but the drums, these kicks are sort of flamming. They sound kind of flabby, and it's just not right. The other thing I'm also noticing is that we got so much stuff going into our drum bus now that the drum bus is kind of going into the red. And I'm going to trim this back. In fact, we can just do it from over here. So on our drum bus, I'm going to take the gain and trim this back about maybe 4 dB or so. Now, why do I do that? You don't hear clipping. We got tons of headroom. Why do it? Well, there's a really good reason. Gain staging is really important for plugins, and here's why. If I were to drop a plugin on this master bus or use a bus compressor or something, which we're going to do, that plugin is getting the full tilt, the full bit of gain going into that. So I see a lot of people, they'll leave it that way. They'll put the plugins in, and then they turn down the bus so it's not going into the red anymore. The problem is that any plugins or inserts on that bus are getting too much gain, which is has a couple problems. One, the plugin's going to react differently. It's going to sound differently, and you don't have as much sort of headroom to be able to add the color that that plugin might impart to the signal. So what I like to do on any of my buses is I back the gain off the input trim, because none of the individual drums are clipping or anything, but cumulatively into the drum bus, they're driving it into the red. So I bring the input gain of the bus back a little bit so the bus is getting proper gain, so that when I put a plug-in insert or a Pro Channel plug-in, it gets proper gain as well. And then I can mix the bus to taste kind of that stem so that it works and sits in the song, but I'm not doing it because my bus is overloading. So that's really proper gain staging. I see a lot of people, a lot of users kind of not get that, and I think it's a really important thing to remember and keep in mind.
Yeah, if you're actually overdriving a plugin, that can actually affect the sound of the plugin. So
absolutely,
great point.
Absolutely, and your plugin might be clipping.
Yeah,
even though you say your channel's not clipping, but you look at your plugin, it's clipping. So okay, so we got this problem of these kind of dueling kicks. I like the snare, but I got dueling kicks going on, and I'm not real happy about that. So I'm going to double click this. This is the loop construction view, and this is where we can see individual slices. And we can go in and change pitch, volume, pan, or anything of any of these loops. And this is a way you can really make loops your own. Seth showed this in the last webinar. We were kind of doing this on parallel tracks and finding that, wow, this is really useful again. This was introduced a long time ago, but you don't want to forget its usefulness. So what I'm going to do is just pull these kicks down, and I'm going to go ahead and get rid of the whole thing. So that's a snare. That's fine. Another kick. There's probably a little ending on the kick here. And I know this is fascinating to watch, but it must be done. Not all music production is exciting to watch, but it's important. So just pulling these out, going to slide over a little bit more and just get the rest of them. Now I've not extended the loop yet, because if I extend the loop and double click it, I have to do it through the whole thing. So I'm going to get the loop right to begin with, and then I'll extend it to where I need it to go.
And while you're doing this, we're getting a couple questions here about clipping on buses and tracks and things like that, and does it add warmth? Do I want to do it? In the digital domain, I would say absolutely not. You definitely want to avoid clipping. Now, the thing is, with Sonar's 64-bit double precision audio engine, you actually need to go to like +10 or +12 to actually hear any distortion most of the time. But in the digital domain, definitely don't clip. In fact, the old rule in the analog world of getting a signal as hot as possible without clipping literally doesn't apply in the digital world. No. So if you're recording a signal, or if you're sending a signal through a bus, if you get it at -6, -12, -14, you got plenty of headroom. I would kind of think in those terms. So.
Yeah, if you want to add warmth, use a plugin to do it. Use some kind of tube distortion. Use some external piece of gear. I don't know. All these people would like run their master out to like a tape deck and back in. I mean, there's all kinds of ways to do it. All kinds of great plugins these days to do it. But definitely adding digital distortion. I mean, it can be used as an effect on something here and there. Like there are some interesting things, but I wouldn't want to do it to warm anything.
Yeah.
So let's listen to what this loop sounds like now. Now I could pull out the hi-hats too, but you know what? These hi-hats are going to work because they fall right on top of the other ones. Yeah, I think they're going to work. So now soloing this whole section, let's take a listen. Move to the part we want. So now we've got that snare in there. Without that snare, just beefs up that
really nice some top end kind of clicky attack to that 909 snare that really doesn't really have a whole lot of attack to it.
It doesn't. It's kind of got that sound, but to add a little snap to it, it's nice. So here I was able to combine a step sequencer loop with a built-in 909 with an audio loop that I completely just sliced up and pulled things out of to make it work for this. All running into the drum bus together, all in the same folder. Okay. A little more on the drums. So save. And so I want to, on top of this, because this is going to happen, there's going to be no drums here, and you're going to hear, and all of a sudden, okay. This needs a little work though. First of all, that kick is sounding a little anemic to me. So I'm going to select the kick, go to Pro Channel, and let's just make this thing sound better. First thing I'd like to do is replace this tube with the saturation knob. So I'm going to saturate this kick a little bit first. So let's hear how this sounds. And I'm just going to solo out the kick. Now, tons of saturation. You get like a kind of 9 Inch Nails type thing. But let's just give it a little bit. Without. Just gives it a lot. Just, that indescribable something.
Yeah,
And you can say keep low, keep high. I'm going to do the whole thing. I'm just going to saturate the whole kick coming in. I find a lot of times the saturation knob right at about this level is good for drums. You can give it some more of that kind of flavor, but that's nice versus that.
Yeah, it's just
it's louder, but it sounds different.
It's a little bit of color.
It does.
Character.
So that's going to be the first thing in my chain. Now I want to EQ it also, and again I'm going to go to the G type because I want to just boost the low end, cut the high end. So let's listen to the kick, and I'm going to kind of just go by feel here. A little bit of 60, 70 hertz. Just add some thud. Without, you definitely hear that. I'm just going to suck out all the high end. So it's rounder.
It's got that nice boomy sound
Yep.
you'd expect to hear in a club or something.
That's what I wanted. I
Yeah.
wanted that kind of sub-bass sort of sound, less click, more boom.
Yeah.
And then let's compress it. So PC76, perfect for drums like this. It's got the fast attack. So let's just kind of give it a slower release. We get more boom, real fast attack. Now without, that was the kick with everything. In this case, I chose to compress the EQ. You could compress first and then do the EQ. It's all about taste and what you want. In this case, I think it sounds better like that. Now let's bring everything in. Listen just to drums. That's with the original kick. And yes, you could dial it in. There might be some of you saying, I'd like to. No. You can do that. But this is about working fast, getting something that sounds good quickly. Let's make sure that kick is. And let's look at our drum bus. Okay, drum bus is kind of going over the top a little bit again. Let's just pull it back. Snares are kind of pushing it over a little bit. Okay, all that's good. Now, let's do a little more to the drums. Going to add in some crash cymbals, and then we'll go mix the drum bus, okay? So, needs a crash cymbal on top of this hit. That's obvious. So now, some of you might say, well, just use the crash cymbal in the 909. I could do that, but I like crash cymbals that sound a little more natural. I like the electronic sound of the kicks and snares and the hi-hats, but I like to have kind of a more natural crash cymbal on top of downbeats because it just sounds better to me. But, you know, your mileage may vary. So I've got this crash cymbal. It sounds like that. It's a little more natural than a 909 crash cymbal, which actually sounds like this. Okay, a little bit different. So I'm going to grab this crash cymbal and I'm just going to drop it right in there. Again, I'm going to move this to the drum folder, and I'm going to route it out to my drum bus. I want everything in the same spot. So let's listen to how this is going to sound. Okay, so better. So it's got a little something. But I want to go further. I'm going to turn down the crash a little bit. This is an idea that's so great about a DAW. You can kind of mix and sound design and write music all simultaneously, which is great. There isn't these sort of assembly line thing anymore if you don't want to adhere to that. Little drama leading up. Little backward cymbal maybe into this because it's going to be a quiet part ahead of it. So I happen to have a backward cymbal here that sounds like that. That would be perfect. So I'm going to drag it into this track. Drop it in, and let's go ahead and just zoom in a little bit. Now, this would be kind of the obvious way to do it, which would be, and that would be great. That would be totally fine. But I kind of want to do something a little more unexpected. So I'm going to switch my snap grid to quarter notes, and I'm going to pull this back a quarter note so it does this. But it'd be cool if there was it went into a snare hit, dropped, and then everything came in. A little bit more exciting. So how do we do that? Well, we're already at quarter notes. I'm going to take the original step sequencer clip, not the snare drum, well, not the crash cymbal, but the two drum parts, and I'm going to roll them back one quarter note. Okay, so now it's going to hit on that quarter note, but there's still a problem. It's got kind of the stuff that's left over. So if you listen to, there's still all that rolling and stuff going on. So holding Alt, using the Smart tool, I'm just going to snip those two. They were grouped, so the cut applied to both. And I'm going to drag them back to just the hit. Okay, so now it sounds like, and let's listen to the whole thing. Okay, so a lot more drama, very cool. But got a problem that the drums are just kind of too soft overall. A little bit not anemic sounding anymore, but they just need to be more present. So we're going to go to the drum bus. And this thing works wonders on the drum bus, which is, if you have the Pro channel, the PC4K bus compressor. It's just perfect for it. So I'm going to turn it on. Pro channel turns on. And let's put the release on auto and kind of do a fairly fast attack because it's drums. And we'll play with the threshold and makeup as we go here. So. Okay, without, with, and I'm actually going to adjust the wet dry a little bit, let a little bit of that dry signal come through. So this is like built-in parallel compression going on here. And now you see that snare hit, when it hits like a lot more. It sounds a lot better. Bring down the crashes just a little bit more. So, sounding better to me.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it just adds that kind of glue and fatness and warmth to a drum track. And you mentioned the wet dry knob. I mean, that's really, it is like having parallel compression similar to it, kind of built in, whereas, you know, you don't have to create a secondary bus and deal with all the routing. I mean, not that that's a big deal, but just having one knob right there.
Absolutely.
So ergonomic and quick to just kind of dial in wet dry for compression.
Because listen, that's without. That snare is still there, but when you turn it on, that kick and kind of the hi-hats come out more, and the whole thing just sounds just bigger and more like a record.
Yeah, absolutely.
Got any questions over there?
No, keep on rolling. Keep on, although they're complimenting the song, but
cool.
we'll get some more questions soon.
Maybe we lost everybody. All right, so okay, so we've got drums. Drums are dialed in. Let's go ahead and leave that, and let's get to some more musical elements. So I'm thinking soaring string section, but I'm a huge fan of mellotrons. I just love. I can't get enough of mellotrons. And I think what I wanted for this was sort of a mellotron style thing to go on here. So what I did was I created a track template, and I keep this track template and I use it regularly. And what it is let me go back to my sections here, my track templates. And what I did was I made a thing called Vintage String Choir. And what it is it's 3-dimension pros stacked together. I do this a lot. I save sort of stacks of virtual instruments. Not a lot of people know you can do this. So you load up all your virtual instruments, you stack them all up together, turn all their input monitors on by control input monitor, so it turns them all on together, route them to a bus maybe, pan them out, balance their levels, put your effects on them, and boom, you got your patch right away. So that's what this is, and we'll go through what it is in a second, but I'm just going to drop it in. It's going to instantiate 3-dimension pros and load up all their patches, and right away, so what you're hearing here is a full string section, a real string section. In Dimension Pro, you're hearing mellotron strings, and you're also hearing a sort of kind of 80s, 90s style synth choir. They all have reverbs on them, varying amounts of reverbs, because the individual patches had certain amounts of reverb, so it's all put together. But what's also cool is it's actually going into this string choir bus. So if you look at the console, I now have a bus for string choir, so I can mix that whole section independently, kind of as its own stem. So another nice thing about that is that since it's all nicely in a folder, I can unsolo it. It's all automatically input monitored, so I didn't have to do anything. I actually saved the template with the input monitors turned on. So that's all right there. And I can hit record enable. So we'll just say before we start, let's start. We're going to record before the record enable. I'll leave the metronome on for this part, and hopefully I'll get it right. We won't have to do it again. So I'm going to record enable the whole section. So I hit record enable on the folder, all the tracks within it, record enable, hit R on our keyboard, and go. Okay, there's our string part. I think it worked out pretty well.
We do have a question about the choir sound. Is that one of the sounds that comes with Dimension Pro? Or is that an expansion pack?
Fantastic question.
And perhaps the string sounds too.
So yeah, so full strings, this is built into the Dimension Pro library. It's in the string section. The Tron strings is called Victor Ensemble, and I believe that one is in the vintage, the one that comes with Sonar X1. It's got like there's like a vintage library.
Oh, it's the extra
the DSF classic keys. DSF classic keys. Yeah, that's what that is. And I believe the choir is also DSF classic keys. So that was a mixture of a bunch of that stuff. In here, I've got it was the Digital Sound Factory classic keys that were in there. That was 2 of the sounds, then one was
nice.
built in.
Yeah, so if you've got X1 Producer, don't forget to install that. It is a separate disc.
Yep, a lot of people don't do that.
Yeah.
The additional content. If you don't want the demo tracks, you can uncheck those. But getting the Hollywood sound effects, which we're actually going to use in a second,
yes,
and the Digital Sound Factory stuff is great. There's all kinds, and you start stacking these things, and you get really great sounds. It's like a Mellotron-esque thing, but it's got the oomph of some real strings, and it's got this sort of choir, this ominous sort of choir, which a lot of times Mellotron tracks would be stacked to have strings and choirs simultaneously, and that's kind of what this is. But it's all stock. I mean, the only things so far I've used that haven't been in here that are not in Sonar is the original kind of sub-boom bass, Rob Papin, which is a great sound, and then I used a full version of True Pianos for the Emerald module. That's it. Otherwise, everything's built in, and everything from here on out is built in. So 2 elements, and of course, it doesn't come with an acoustic guitar.
Right.
Actual acoustic guitar. So now I want these strings to come in again later. So I'm just going to grab the whole folder. There's a folder composite sort of, and I will just copy this over to this other drums section. Let's pull this back to measure again. And we want it to fall, I want it to repeat. So I'm going to pull it back to, I think this would be, I'm just visualizing this, I think this would work. So we want it again to follow there. I believe that's the case. Maybe we want this here. I think this is how it was. Let's listen. So far, so good. See if it comes back around properly. Okay, that's exactly what I wanted. Oh, sometimes the dog gods smile upon you. Okay, so there's our string section, all finished. And in fact, what I'll do just real quickly is I'll just drag this out a little bit so this whole part just kind of ends and trails off into this little ending section. We'll clean it up later or something.
And just a quick comment here. Racer says he didn't realize you could actually lasso select tracks, copy and paste them that way. He says he's always been selecting the entire project and doing things sort of.
Oh yeah.
So
take a quick lasso, boom, there you go.
So really just a fantastic, easy way to kind of arrange parts of songs.
Totally. Especially if you have lots of little clips.
Yep.
I mean, in my projects, a lot of times I got all these tiny little clips, either because there's a bunch of different things going on, or I've got a guitar part that I want to play, but I'm not really good at playing it yet. I'm more of a keyboard player by trade and guitar player by want.
Happens to me as well. Sure.
So I'll get all the little parts right. So it's all these tiny little clips, and I can just bounce it if I want to, but I'll just lasso the whole thing and move it over. So yeah, it's very handy. Okay, so there's our string choir. So why don't we, what else do we got left? Why don't we...
Is it time for the thunder? Is it time for thunder?
It's time for the thunder. It's a rainy day outside, and this is a very moody piece, and I'm a big fan of rain. I'm such a sucker for rain sounds. Yeah. So there is, again, the Hollywood sound effects. There is a patch in Dimension Pro called Rain and Thunder. There's also gunshots, if you want to have the cops called on you.
Cannon fodder.
There's tree frogs and insects, but they're really, really well done. Really nice set of sounds, and those come with the additional content as well. So I'm going to drag in the Rain and Thunder. It's a Dimension Pro patch. There it is, Rain and Thunder. Sounds like this. So it's, oh, it doesn't sound like that. It sounds like I have something enabled. It happens to all of us. Here we go. Rain comes in. All these different kinds of rain. Heavy rain, rain on tin roofs, different types of thunder, rolling thunder. all these different kinds of things. And sometimes, depending on the music you're doing, depending on where you're doing it, what you're doing it from, sometimes these sort of environmental sounds are useful. And this is the beauty of, I always say I always say Dimension Pro comes with everything from Rhodes to rain sticks to rain. It has all kinds of things. The sound palette out of the box in Sonar is, I think, without equal. And this is, I think, proof. So as we get to the thing where kind of the drums end and everything ends, I'm going to bring in this little element of sound, to slow rain and just some thunder to kind of end with the ambience of this. So I've got that record enabled, and we'll go from here. Nice little fade out there at the end. And probably time to kill the metronome during recording, because we've got all the parts in there that we want. So I think that worked. I could go back and edit it, double click it, it would show up in the bottom, but that's good enough. All right.
We've got actually a really good question asking about stacking synths. So there are a bunch of folks who actually are wondering, like, how do you stack synths and trigger strings and choirs layered on top of each other all at the same time, and then how would you save that, say, as like a track template to load up later on?
Great idea. So you drag in a synth like Dimension Pro or Rapture or whatever. You drag it in, you get the sound the way you want it to. I put them in a folder, all of them, because it's like a stack. So like if you look at Vintage String Choir here, this part with the 3 tracks below it, each one is an instrument track, an instance of Dimension Pro. Get your sound. You've got your mixing fader here and console. So let's look at it. So let's say we've got where are these sounds? So here's our choir, string, full string, and tron strings. So they're kind of volume set a certain way. I've got them kind of panned out a certain way. Once you get that and you get it set up, and also routed it to a bus. I created a string choir bus. And once you get it routed out there, use the folder selection. It'll select everything in there. Right click on any of the tracks. Say save as a track template. And once it's a track template, it shows up in your track templates over here, wherever you store your track templates, and you just drag it in the next time and it's ready to go.
So basically a track template is going to save literally everything from the track folder that the tracks are in, to the bus routing,
settings,
pro channel modules, track icons, names. And also, so let's say, part of this question I think is how would you trigger these? So there's these buttons here on each of the tracks, the input echo buttons. So if you enable input echoing on multiple instrument tracks, you're going to trigger those tracks on top of each other at the same time.
Right. So for instance, this is well, I've got them all set to input, but yeah, so that plays them all. And if you save it that way, it'll stay that way. And then every time you drag, you say, oh, I want that cool sound. I mean, at home in my system, and I've got like just dozens and dozens of these synth stacks, with just different things layered on top of other things. And you come up with these sounds and you want to keep them. And too many people, they get the sound and it's there, and oh wow, this is really great. I'm having a lot of fun. Then they turn their computer off and go to bed, and it's never there. Save it as a track template. You never know when you might want it again. The beauty of track templates too in Sonar, they're much more advanced than a lot of these kind of track template-y type features in a lot of programs, in that they do include everything: the mix, the bus, the effects on the bus, all the effects settings and inserts, the right patch. I mean, I don't a lot of times even load synths anymore. I just load a track template. I've got like some Abbey Road drum kits and things I like, and I just set them all up. And session drummer like my 909s, I have 707 kits. I just save it all as a track template, and I work from track templates a lot more than I work from loading a synth, loading a patch. So much faster. Yeah,
you don't have to reinvent the wheel every time. You just come up with the sound you really like, save it for later on.
Totally. Let's enter the matrix.
Yes.
The matrix view. All right.
Red pill, blue pill?
I don't know. Orange pill.
Okay.
So this is a cool thing. So the matrix. I dropped some little vocal samples in here. Kind of a sucker for these kind of ambiences, listening to things like Skinny Puppy and stuff growing up. I like these kind of little vocal sounds, and this needed it. This is not a song that has vocals in it. It might have some little sounds you want to add from maybe old movies and things. Could be anything. Could be loops, what have you. So I've dragged just a few of these things in.
You find out what's... Close your eyes.
Breaths.
It was all in your mind.
These kinds of things. Okay, so like that one's obviously very, very loud. So I've got a track set up, which is just called Matrix. I just created it ahead of time. And all this is a little folder that's got an audio track, which this is routed to, Matrix, and a MIDI track, in case I want to play something else and not the Matrix. So I'm going to turn on the MIDI input on the Matrix, and I've got everything captured. They're all just
Ultrasonic.
on the pads. And let me make sure I'm only playing.
Ultrasonic.
Okay, I'm also playing a string patch.
I think we turned input echo on.
I did.
Yeah.
So I'm going to turn all that off.
Yeah.
And
Ultrasonic. Vibration.
much better. But it's bright and kind of ugh. So I'm going to just click, Pro Channel comes up, boom, how can we use the Pro Channel to make this better? First thing I can do is I want a delay on this. So I dropped in a tempo delay just from the browser. It's already there. It was in my template. So now I've got... Love this tempo delay. Often, again, overlooked. Really nice, very musical. It's got a filter on it, feedback, so you can get some lo-fi delay type sounds, and it also tempo syncs at various musical values. This is dotted half notes. Okay, so cool. So that's there. But what I'd also like to do is I just need to level these volumes out. And I could go and edit the individual samples or run them to a bunch of separate tracks and mix them, but I don't have time in the scenario, and I don't have time right now. So a quick way to fix this is you go to the matrix view. I'm going to right-click on the compressor that's here, and I'm going to replace this, and I'm going to use the PC2A leveler. And this is the kind of thing you'd use on vocals. Well, these are vocal samples. Very smooth compression. So I'm going to bring down the peak reduction just a little bit and increase the gain.
Ultrasonic.
You find out what's in
Vibration.
It was all in your mind.
Close your eyes.
You find out
So it's doing exactly what it's supposed to do. It's leveling all the volumes of all these things. Then I can kind of use the gain to kind of mix this into it. So wonderful for this sort of thing. Also going to drop the EQ in front of it, turn the EQ on, use the high-pass filter at a steep slope, just to roll off if there's any, in case these samples have any weird rumble in them or anything.
Ultrasonic. Vibration.
it was this.
Close your eyes.
You find
Okay, so what's he going to do with this stuff? Well, let's see. So I've got these vocal samples, but I don't know where I want to put them, and I don't want to cut them all up and do little stutters and stuff like that. I'm not sure exactly how I want them to lay out. So the beauty of the Matrix, one of the things you can do is you can just throw stuff in it and you can play it organically as if it's an instrument. And you can pass over after pass, try it out, and when you're ready you can record it as a performance, and it kind of does all the editing for you in a very musical way. And you can just hit the record button and hit play. Let's see what we can do.
Vibration. Ultrasonic. Vibration.
you find out what's inside of it.
Okay, so all of that editing is done. And I might decide, all right, well, at the end, went a little too far, didn't really want these here. Just going to delete them. So quick lasso select, delete, gone. And maybe we'll kill this one too, delete, gone. Maybe fade this. This is the beauty of it. You can go back and do all this stuff. So let's take a listen real quickly. It's kind of in the middle of what we got.
Find out what's inside of it.
You'll hear that stuttering I did. Now, look at this. Now, some of you might say, well, you know, you could do that with editing. I could do that with editing. But getting that right on the time, doing it all, painful process, not much fun, not very musical. You know, so it acts like a sampler in a way, but it's very advanced because certain sounds you can actually have start where they would in their piece, and then you can have other sounds that always trigger from the beginning, and you have all these different trigger modes. I set my trigger mode to immediate because I want to be able to stutter. I have a second trigger mode that's at 30-second notes in case I need things to be right on the beat. So that's the beauty of the Matrix. And One more thing I want to do is to bring out that delay a little bit. I'm going to actually set the Pro channel so that it is post delay. So now the delay is running into the PC2A. So you'll get kind of this thing. So it's you know, it's cool. And listen to like this kind of thing.
Find out what's inside us.
Okay, so that's how you can use the matrix. So if you're wondering what the matrix is, why you should use it, that is one use of it. It has a million other uses, but that is one.
It really is a cool little built-in phrase sampler. I gotta say, I like using it for that too, and it's really handy. Absolutely,
just being able to drag loops into it and stuff. And I just recently started using it with the PC2A, and it works fantastic for that kind of thing. Okay, so we've got the matrix in. We're really getting to the point here where we're about done. I think it's time, what we should do is, there's a little lead part I want to lay down, and then we'll just do some quick mastering, and I think we're getting pretty close to finished, kind of to finish this tune and deliver it. For the lead, I want to use the Jupiter 80 over here. Now, the reason I want to use the Jupiter 80 is just want to show you something kind of cool. The Jupiter 80 now has its own control surface plugin. So if we go to the properties, you'll see this right on screen. You can enable ACT inside the Jupiter 80. So, you know, going to the menu, there's actually an ACT section on the touch screen, which you can enable, and it should say, does it say it's on?
Okay. There we go.
Now it's on.
There we go.
So ACT is on, and you can set it, you know, your local on and off right from here or right from inside the touchscreen in the Jupiter 80. You can, whether you want to control tracks or effects and instruments. I want to control instruments in this case. You can control all your knobs and sliders. So it's a custom control surface like you'd find for the A800 Pro, like you'd find for a VS100, a VS700, any of that kind of stuff. So very, very cool. Not to mention the Jupiter 80 has like tons of awesome sounds in it. So if you do need a synth with sounds in it for stage or for studio, one of the great things about that is that you do have the sounds and everything, but you also have the control surface functionality of the knobs and sliders, the transport controls. You can mix the internal sounds with the external sounds, et cetera, et cetera. So very, very cool. So in this case, though, I'm going to use it to control Dimension Pro again. And I've got this lead sound that is called OB Pulsator. I think this is also in the classic, the DSF classic thing, for being completely inarticulate.
The expansion pack?
Okay, so controlling, so what I'm gonna do is go ahead and set the input of this. Instead of from Omni, I'm gonna set it to the Jupiter 80. Okay, I think I need to set it to channel 1, because I'm getting multiple. Now I have nothing. Okay. Oh, because I set it to A Pro. Of course I don't have anything. Okay, so I'm going to do something like this. Now, one of the cool things that I have is a D-beam. That's one of the neatest things on the Jupiter 80 is having the D-beam, because I can set it to control assignable volume, so I could control filters, things like that. I can also control pitch. So yes, you have a pitch bend, which is also cool, but having the D-beam adds a lot of flair. It's a lot of fun to use for, you know, filters and stuff like that. If you're on stage, it certainly adds a certain flair to the performance, I would say, wouldn't you, Seth?
Absolutely, yeah. It's, you know, get hands-on.
Absolutely.
In a different way.
Absolutely. So let's figure out where, I'm going to kind of start a little bit before where it says solo, and you know, this is improvised, so let's hope for the best. Hope everyone's rooting for me. And let's turn the metronome off. I don't really want to, oh, we already did. Yeah. I don't want to hear the metronome while we're recording these parts. And let's just go.
Ultrasonic, ultrasonic,
Vibration, vibration.
Find out what's inside us. Find out what's inside us.
Okay, not the best solo in the world, but okay. I was a little distracted by that it was too loud, but it works. You get the idea, and there it is, and it'll suffice. And of course, we could go back and we could make edits or what have you to that. So let's just take a quick listen just to show you that everything is indeed there. Double-clicking brings up all the stuff. You can see all my wheel movements, my channel movements, my velocity, all that kind of stuff. Take a listen. Okay, so there we got that. So let's close out that and just do a quick save after you get your stuff the way you want it. It's always great to do. And so let's talk about a little bit about maybe a mix for this thing, just sort of like a quick master. Now, if you look at the console, you'll see that everything's kind of got its, I've been kind of tweaking volumes along the way and pans and stuff, and, you know, I'd say use as much time as you have to get all this right, you know, maybe write in some automation on the, you know, I did do a little automation on the acoustic guitar ahead of time, kind of cheated on that a little bit, but you could go through and envelope that so it kind of dies out at the right time and stuff, all depending, of course, upon the piece of music. But one thing we need to do is definitely, we got the drums kind of pumping, but we need to kind of do something on the master, I think. So going to kind of the loudest section of the song. Looking at the master bus. Okay, so I just brought down the matrix a little bit because it was a little bit loud. So we're in this sort of section with the master, and a great way to get a very quick master. Obviously, we go through and do some EQ. To my ears right now, doesn't need a lot. Again, really depends on where this is going and what it's for. But one thing I would like to do is add some bus compression to kind of glue the whole thing together a little bit. I think that's important. So kind of setting the release to auto, we'll adjust the attack and threshold as we kind of go. Let's hear how this bus compressor sounds on here. A little more.
Ultrasonic. Ultrasonic.
Without.
Find out what's inside us. Find out what's inside us.
Okay, so a little bit of bus compression, obviously mixed to taste. But the other thing is the concrete limiter. So let's go ahead and drop in, insert module, the concrete limiter. And this is great to get that kind of extra little bit of dB that's often necessary in this day and age. And let's see. Let's go ahead and pull this too. I don't like to be really distracted by things I don't need. EQ's off, concrete limiters here. Generally in a mix like this, few dB, don't squash it to the point of no return. I mean, if the silent finger acoustic guitar part is as loud as the drums in the solo, back off. Back off the limiter. But, you know, getting it kind of up to par, and you can see how much you're limiting. So right now, mouse is freaking out for some reason. I don't know why. I can't pull it down more.
You can double click and enter a specific value.
All right. Well, my mouse is doing strange things. There we go. So oftentimes my mixes end up coming out where I need about 3 dB of limiting. So no pro channel, and pro channel. So let's go back to the beginning, and I think that's where we're at. Now, I used to always master in separate projects. I think it's still a smart thing to do in a lot of ways. You kind of have your pre-master project, export out, you know, a floating point file, 24-bit or 32-bit or what have you, go to another project and start mastering. However, with the increases in speed, you know, we're still at 2 milliseconds of latency. all of this, 2 milliseconds of latency, you can master in the same project. As long as your gain staging is proper, there's no difference really between putting mastering plugins, if your gain staging is proper, putting mastering plugins on your master bus versus exporting it and taking it into a new project. There really is no difference anymore.
Yeah.
So I find sometimes I just master right in the thing, turn the, you know.
Absolutely. And in fact, we had a couple of good questions about exporting a while ago, and I thought this might be a good time to address that. So what if instead you don't want to master yourself? What if you're sending your project off to a proper mastering house, or maybe you're just collaborating with someone else?
Sure.
So one of the people was asking, and forgive me, I forget exactly who it was asking about exporting stems and things like that in the export dialog.
Great question. What we would do is, in this case, you'd turn off your effects on the master bus, and we would go to our file export and export audio. And the thing to do here is determine, okay, what do you want to export? If you want the whole mix, you'd select entire mix. You'd pick your sample rate up to 192. Now, for CD, it's always been 44.1, but now, of course, with like, you know, might do a 96K FLAC download or something. You know, it all depends. Is it meant for Blu-ray or what have you? Sometimes that's 48, sometimes that's 96, sometimes it's 192. So you'd select that. You'd select your bit depth. Your bit depth for export, if you're sending it to another mastering house or someone to master, best to ask them how they want it. I would send them at least a 24-bit file, if not higher, a 32-bit or even 64-bit floating point file. They bring it in natively, work with it, and then export it out, handle the dithering process and everything. So, but let's say you're going to CD. In that case, you'd go to 4416 and you'd want to apply dithering. The power dithers are the higher end dithering algorithms. I tend to like Power 3. Don't know why. I have no reasoning. A lot of people like Power 3. You know, your mileage may vary. But anytime you're changing the bit depth from the internal resolution, you need to dither, because otherwise you're just throwing away the bits. And you don't know what bits you're throwing away. It's like cleaning out your garage and just, instead of packing all the important stuff into the garage, you're throwing away things that just could be useful later.
Right.
You know?
So you've got all these options for exporting a stereo file, like if you're burning a CD. But what if you want to export individual tracks?
Right. So that's the source category. So tracks. This would include all of our tracks. And why are they not all showing? Probably because I don't have everything selected.
You need to select them. So if you hit Control A,
Control A before you go to your export process. Yeah. So if we go to tracks, there's all of our individual tracks, and I can determine. I can deselect some of them, select some of them. So this would be if you want to just take all the tracks to a studio, or somebody else is using a different DAW. Maybe they're using one of the other DAWs. You can export all the individual tracks with or without the mix enables, with or without the effects, the automation, etc. You can determine all of that. And if you want to send out what's considered a stem mix, that's generally what people are talking about is buses. So if I say buses, these are my buses. I got a master bus, a drum bus, and a string choir bus. There's nothing sent to the preview or metronome buses at this point. So these are the buses. I can determine which ones I want. The master bus would have everything. The drums would just have the drums. String would just be the string choir. If you have vocals and guitars and all that, you send those to buses. That's why it's nice to mix to buses or to stems.
Yeah.
It's kind of a synonymous thing, just depending on what field you're working in.
Yep.
So that's how you'd send out your buses, and you'd end up with multiple tracks. Now, another way to master would be to take those buses, export them, pull them into a new project, and master at the stem level as opposed to a master bus. It's another technique people do. You can read a lot about it. Also, the preset area, you can set presets for all this, and there are presets already set up. Raw broadcast wave files, raw tracks. Believe it or not, you Sonar users are very lucky because not every DAW have these features. Some don't let you export individual tracks, some won't do buses, some don't have presets, some don't have a 64-bit mix engine on the end, some don't have nice dithering built in. I mean, as Sonar users, we're very lucky that we get all these capabilities. You can also mix to broadcast wave, which are time-stamped waves, which would let you take them into another DAW and they would go to their time-stamped location. FLAC for SoundCloud. FLAC is a compressed format that is totally lossless, sounds exactly like the original. You have FLAC, you have MP3, Sony Wave 64, you can do Sound Designer 2, which is not used as much anymore, but AIFF. All of these formats are available right from within Sonar to kind of let you export to whatever it is you need to export to. And the SoundCloud stuff will take you right to SoundCloud as well, which is a great place to put FLAC files and things. And there's multi-channel. You can do split mono for DAWs that like split mono, or if you have a surround bus in the project, you can also export to 5.1, etc.
Right. And we have a really good follow-up question here asking, can you send a folder to export as a stem? And the way it works in Sonar, folders don't actually group audio. Those are simply sort of a graphical organizational tool.
Yep.
So what you would do is you would route your individual tracks. They can be any folder or not in a folder. You'd route those tracks to buses like Brandon was talking about. Then you would export the buses as stems. So again, folders are just for organizational purposes. They don't actually group or route audio.
And I'd love to address that because a lot of people ask that, and there are DAWs that make folders route to buses. And personally, I don't like it because I think it reduces your flexibility. And here's why.
I agree.
You could select everything in a folder and automatically send it all to a bus. So you could do that just by selecting the folder, route all selected outputs, go to a bus, you're done. But the reason you might not want buses to inherently go to tracks is because you might have a drum folder, and it might have drums and percussion, or it might have kicks and snares and hi-hats, and you might actually want a bus for percussion and a bus for your kicks and snares and hi-hats. Separate buses, separate effects, separate mix, but you want them in a nice folder. So if folders automatically change your mix and send things a certain way, you actually lose flexibility. Folders are for organization, buses are for mixing and for organizing your mix. And I believe the two should be separate. Now, could we have a feature that said, you know, send all tracks in a folder to a bus? Sure. And we almost kind of have that by being able to select and send all selected to a bus. So that's how that works. But there's a reason that it doesn't do that, is because it offers you more flexibility in not doing that, essentially. Any more questions we have?
I'll
tell you what. Let's just play the track back from the beginning. I'm going to blow it up like this, and we'll play it through. If we have any comments along the way or questions, we'll go ahead and answer them, and let's do it. Bus was not on, so there's our mastering effects. Much better now. A little effects chain I wanted to drag onto that finger-picked acoustic guitar we'll do after.
Vibration.
Ultrasonic.
Vibration.
You find out what's inside us.
And there we have the track.
And now you're sipping on a cup of tea on your porch.
Yeah, exactly.
Rainy
You're done.
afternoon.
You're done. You just watch the money roll in.
Absolutely.
Fame and fortune. It all can be
Yeah.
yours. Any questions before we end or anything?
What about Effects Change 2.0?
Okay, well, there
Do we
was
have
one,
maybe 2
there was one
minutes
thing,
to
yeah,
do
there's
that?
one thing I
Cool.
didn't do that I wanted to do, which I wish I had done, but, you know, and everything's perfect. Listening to this back, the finger picking part still needs a little something, I think. So I'm going to go into our Effects Change 2.0. I'm going to go into Retro, and there's a really cool one that our friend Jimmy Landry, otherwise known as Lil Sham, created called Tube Analog Delay. And I'm going to grab this and just drop this on the acoustic finger picking part. And what it adds is a TL64 tube leveler, a tempo delay, a reverb, and a compressor, all with just individual knobs to control. So I don't have to have all 4 of these plugins open. I don't have to be confronted with all of their UIs, all of their windows, all of the controls. I don't need all that. I just kind of want it to act as one effect with the crucial controls right in front of me and a cool background. And that's how this works. So listening to the tube delay, I'm just going to hit play on this part. So without it, so it's a little bit louder, but I can adjust that. But what it does is it just widens it out, adds a little bit of warmth to it, kind of gives it this little bit more spacey sort of sound. So listening in the mix with it, take a listen. To me, that sounds much better.
Yeah, yeah.
As soon as it came on and we were playing through, I thought it's missing something. Without, with. And then moving forward, just with that into the other sections.
You find out what's inside us.
So there you go. That's the kind of thing. Keeping everything in one project at low latency allows you to go back, add effects, make changes. You're never stuck to that sort of, I've written the song. It's cool to write things on piano guitar and then go and realize them in your DAW, but to be able to sit down, I just played that little piano part. That was kind of what started all this, was just that little do-do-do-do-do. That was it. And it turned into this, and I've basically just kind of reconstructed it for you. You know, you could do this in, you know, an hour or 2 hours, you know, probably from scratch, and deliver a nice piece of music. You know, tastes vary, but for what its purpose is, but a nice piece of music that sounds good, that's professional, that works, and deliver it quickly. And that's really what it's all about. So I don't have anything else. Do you have anything else?
I think that's about it, guys. Appreciate you hanging and staying up late or getting up early wherever you may be in the world.
Yeah, and this will be recorded. It has been recorded, so it'll be up on CakeTV and up on YouTube later. And we'll be doing this again probably about 8 weeks out. We'll be doing another one of these. You know, let us know what kind of things you want to see, what kind of things you want to hear, and we appreciate you guys so much. Coming out and seeing us at shows, and also joining us on these things and joining us on the forum and things. So thank you again. We appreciate it, and until next time, see you later.
Thank you, guys.